Good afternoon and welcome to Biztech's Asian Midday Market Watch, brought to you by the ShareInvestor Group, providing stock market data analytics, investor education, and online investor relations. Our guest today is Lee Kian Soon, CEO of Astral Asset Management out of Singapore. Now, Kian Soon, great to have you on the show as always.
Good afternoon. Great to be back.
Now, Kian Soon, before we get your insights, as usual, we're going to take a look at crypto markets and we'll take a look at what's been happening in regional stock markets in the first half of the day. We start with Bitcoin. It's at 21,537. It's up 0.01%. Ethereum is at 1,684.39. It's up 0.51%. Now, looking across to regional stock markets, the SGX is up 0.36%. Bursa Malaysia is up 0.34%. Shanghai is up 0.09%. The ASX All Ordinaries is up 0.93%. The Nikkei is up 0.56%. The Hang Seng is up 0.62%. And the Kospi rounds up the numbers and it's up 0.21%. Kian Soon, it's been quite a while since we've had all green across the region. Please tell us why.
Indeed, I think especially this week, it has been all reds for most of the days. With the volatility, I think, triggered by the expectations of what is going to be discussed in the Jackson Hole weekends. Investors are all looking for signs and indications by Fed officials. I guess everybody will be rooted for this evening's discussion and conferences that they will give in terms of getting a sign of where the interest rates hikes are going. Are we going to see a slower pace of interest rate hikes? Or are they going to maintain the same momentum as we have seen over the last few months?
And Kian Soon, essentially, it's not a debate of when and the rates are going to go up. It's only the quantum, isn't it? It's either a 50 basis points or 75 basis points rate rise. What is the consensus leaning to right now?
I think it started with at least 60% saying that it's going to be 50 basis point and the other 40% 75 basis point. I think what is also important or investors are looking at is, apart from what is going to be announced, is the trajectory going forward in the next few months. And at the same time, each month we're going to get the inflation numbers. I think investors will be looking at how this sharp increase in interest rates over the last few months, whether is it going to bring inflation down to a more palatable levels, or whether, despite, passing the, going through the peaks, is inflation going to be around the 6 to 7% region, which is still very high for everybody to accept.
Now, Kian Soon, after the Jackson Hole conversation later today, investor attention is going to shift perhaps to other key issues, including the worsening conditions in China. Now, the latest, to add fuel to the fire, we've had this issue with power and a shortage of power in China. Tell us about this and how this is impacting China, both from a climate change perspective and also from a production perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting that China now, unfortunately, is experiencing a drought, where half the nations is having a drought. And what happens is with the drought, there is a drying out of the rivers, and a lot of the hydroelectric power plants are not working in the southwestern part of China. And as a result, there's a shortage of power, as we've seen that, they have begun power rationing. Factories are not allowed to operate their usual hours. They have to cut short their production hours, which affects productivity, which affects how business operates. And this comes right after the COVID situation and the COVID restrictions measures that they have put up the last few months. So it's definitely adding to their tons of problems that are building up this year. So what they have done is basically power rationing, and we even see that for electric cars, the chargers are not allowed to operate. Tesla and NIO chargers are told to shut down, and we've read reports in Shanghai. The buildings are not allowed to be fully lit up in the evenings, so that they could conserve power. So it will be an interesting situation how long this drought will last and how long this power shortage will last. And the measures that are being put in, or the stimulus that has been put in, is there's going to be definitely much more investments into the power infrastructure for this country. so that these problems will not be repeated again in the coming years.
Okay, so Kian Soon, in the short run then, are we going to see perhaps a return to coal in China, as we have seen perhaps in Europe as well, particularly in Germany, where older coal-fired plants have been reactivated to produce power?
I think if the problem persists, and usually the coal power plants will be a consideration or backup in the winter months. The reason being they needed the electricity to produce insufficient heat, and coal power plant is usually a good alternatives. And if the power shortage problem persists, the coal power plants will definitely be triggered, as we have seen in Europe. This is usually what happens in China in the winter months. Even though we are fully aware that this is not good for the climate, but between having an immediate situation where your citizens are dying of coal and dying of a shortage of heat and electricity, I think they will trigger until the alternatives, the better power plants, more better power plants are built. I guess these nations do not have much of an option.
Now, Kian Soon, the other impact of this is obviously going to be global supply chains yet again. How do you see this scenario playing out as we go towards the winter, the winter months in particular?
I think the global supply chain, the key concern or investors are taking note is actually there's a shortage of, or there's a declining export numbers coming out of China. And this is due to a declining demand from Europe and US as the economy sort of slowed down, as we are seeing in the global trends. So I think it will play out balance, as in there will be a declining demand, and hence I don't think it will be a big hit on the export situation as a result, because it's a balance between a declining demand as well as probably a declining supply as a result of the shortage of power.
Now, Kian Soon, as always, thank you very much for coming on the show, and thank you very much for your insights. Now, we've been speaking to Lee Kian Soon, CEO of Astral Asset Management out of Singapore, on Biztech's Asian Midday Market Watch. Now, for all of our audience in Singapore, InvestFair by ShareInvestor is happening physically at Suntec Convention Hall 404 in Singapore this Saturday on the 27th. That's tomorrow at 9 a.m. onwards. It's free to attend and features a power pack program of 18 investment experts. Sign up today at investfair2022.com. I'm Brian Fernandez. This video and podcast will be on our website, www.biztech.asia, as well as our social media platforms. It will also be on our syndication partners, TV stations, radio stations, and websites. Thanks for tuning in.